Oh boy. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we are back with another episode of Rants and Raves. I'm sure we've seen quite a bit. I know I have. I know I have quite a bit of this uh, rhetoric of Roe versus Wade all over Facebook and Instagram, and women are just looking for excuses to not take accountability for their actions for the most part, unfortunately. Um, So to kind of get into it, today we're going to talk about pair bonding. I think this is kind of an important concept that a lot of people overlook in the dating world, and especially nowadays, not just women, but men too. I very frequently see men not care about a woman's body count. I very frequently see simps simply not just chasing women, but giving in to women. And then to further impress upon the matter, not do any digging into her promiscuous background. And you might argue, well, that's none of your business. Well, the fact of the matter is that if I'm going to give you babies and marry you, then your history is absolutely a lot of my business, right? One thing you'll quickly realize in today's dating market is that men care about a woman's past. However, women care about a man's future, right? Huge pendulum, huge pendulum movements in the dating world. So we're going to be talking about pair bonding today, and what is pair bonding? Pair bonding is, in layman's terms, a term used to define the difference between a woman who can mate and stick with emotionally and physically to a man and not, right? So pair bonding is in direct reference to a woman's ability to be able to emotionally attach to a man, physically connect with a man, and vice versa. Okay, um, because pair bonding affects men much differently than it does women due to our psychological nature. Um, Men are historically uh, non-monogamous. Men have always, since the dawn of time, been able to sleep with multiple women and live moderately well. Women, on the other hand, are not non-monogamous. Women naturally are very monogamous, and if only due to the purpose of them being able to bear children. And what we see very frequently nowadays is women being fed the leftist, feministic ideology that is, you're equal to men, you can do the same thing men can do. And what we're seeing as a drastic result of that is women entering their 30s as single moms, women entering their 30s single and without kids, and further disturbing, women entering their 40s now more than ever with no kids. Uh, Suicide rates are very high due to not having kids, not having a family, not having a solid foundation. And we see a huge incline in women taking depression and anxiety medication, specifically between the ages of 28 and 42. Okay, this is important because obviously um, it's in direct correlation to the feministic movement and teaching women that they're strong, independent women who don't need no men. Well, I personally, I don't have the numbers in front of me for today's video, but I would, if I really had to guess, women, 90, I would venture to say 99% of women, 99, if I may be so bold, of women sincerely and genuinely are inclined to want children. I think that 1% are a rare breed. I think there is a 1% across the world, absolute number, definite number of women who have no interest in bearing children. Absolutely. That number has increased to around 2 to 3%, if I really had to put a number on it, at least here in the West, and at least in regards to the last 10 to 15 years. However, I think that number has increased, again, by my opinion. I think that number has only increased the slight bit that it has because of the leftist feministic movement that is, you're not adhered to a time frame. You could do whatever you want whenever you want. There's no rush. When this, the sad reality is that women specifically are absolutely on a time frame, right? So, I digress. Pair bonding, important shit. We're going to talk about it. We're going to watch this video first. We'll talk about it. And then we have one more for sure. But let's go over it.
That's the whole thing. The last half of the millennials and most of Gen Z clearly here, they're not having sex. There is no hookup culture. Like, put that out of your head. You know what hookup culture? The last time I heard hookup culture used in a serious sense was back in like 2012 or 2014. Like, oh, this college sets where we're gonna go to ASU, right, Arizona State University, because that's a party school, right? There's hookup culture is at ASU, and I'm sure there's some grads in here who are gonna back me up on this as well. Oh, but let's also look at a few other things here, because no one is having sex. Why no one wants to have sex is with Matt Walsh. Haha, gotcha. That's today's the title of today's show. However, this is what I meant. Young male virginity is on the rise. The share of men under the age of 30 who report zero female sex partners since they turned 18. This is from 1989 all the way up to where we're at right now. It started in 2008. Look at that 27% jump right there, Matt Walsh. There is no hookup culture. Not for men anyways, because we already know that there is for women. You know how we know? Because we've got this stat right here as well. Okay. Now, women their sexlessness has jumped up a little bit, but men have outclassed them, outpaced them by at least 10% in the last 10 years, or certainly since 2008 to 2018. Now, this set, what does this say? Young men driving the decline in sex. I have used these stats over and over and over again. I'm sure there are lots of other people online who've done the same thing as well, Matt. There is no hookup culture. I keep throwing this out there, and you just keep throwing it back. You're just a poor marksman, my friend. You don't hit the mark here. You know why? Because you don't want to hit the mark. Either you can't or you won't. And I can only presume that you don't want to hit the mark with this. Okay? This is here. It's been available for a long time. The share of men and women between the ages of 18 and 30 reporting no sex in the past year. Got it? See how that worked out? And this is only 2018. God only knows what it is right now. God only knows. Not me. Maybe you could find that out. You work for Daily Wire. You've got a whole lot more resources than I ever will. Why don't you go look that up, Matt? There ain't no hookup culture. And I'll tell you what didn't kill it. Certainly wasn't Roe v. Wade getting tossed back to the states, because they didn't kill Roe v. Wade. Tradcons are too happy about this, and wokesy leftists are too pissed off about this. They're too mad about it. And you know what? The more we hype this up and the more we have this conflict, man, it's going to come to a head. And I'm the teacher. As far as I know, I'm the only teacher that's out here saying this shit. You won't hear this on Tim Pool. You won't hear this on Candace Owens. You sure as shit won't hear this from Matt Walsh. All that stuff that I talked about, and of course, you'd have to wade through 4 hours of it on Fresh and Fit. But I'll tell you right now, here we are, 45 minutes into my show. You keep this up, you're gonna get the war you're looking for. I shouldn't say that. You're gonna get the war that they're looking for, because that's why all this came up, and you know goddamn well why this came up, right?
You're goddamn right.
You know why this is up. You know why they started talking. What Elizabeth Warren started talking about student debt forgiveness as far back as March 24th. Stop playing like you don't know. You do know. This is the plan, and you are controlled opposition, Matt Walsh. This whole thing is you playing your part. That's what this is. And what's going to happen is when we get to some point where some kid spurgs out because he's a tradcon, and some kid spurgs out because he's a wokesy leftist, and they start shooting at each other, they start hurting one another. It's on you, dude. It's not on me. It's not on the guys who are pointing this stuff out. It's not on the left. It's on you. You're the one that's stoking this just as much as the left is. That's what kills me about all of this. You have all this information. You know what's going on. You play the part anyways.
The other end of the spectrum, some pro-abortion women have gone an entirely different route. Rather than bending over and presenting themselves to the public like a dog in heat, these women have promised a sex strike. They're saying that they will, for a period of time, or maybe forever, stop having sex with random men in order to punish those random men for the Supreme Court's decision. It's not clear what these men have done to deserve that punishment, but I'm sure they're grateful for it anyway. In one popular video on TikTok, an abortion fan lays out the plan specifically.
Love this. See, you notice the words he's using here? Are you guys familiar with here, let me pull this out for a second. Are you guys familiar with neurolinguistic programming? If you know who Ross Jeffries is, you probably do. Wow, it's one of those PUA terms. No, it's not actually. It's a sociological, psychological thing. It's called neurolinguistic programming. You know who else knows this? And probably Andrew Esquire would be able to talk about this. Attorneys use this all the time. They, instead of saying, well, what happened, Miss Jones, when your car bumped into the back of the other car? That's different than saying, well, what happened, Miss Jones, when your car went careening and slammed head first into the front of this or the back of the car? That's neurolinguistic. The words you choose have an emotional impact.
Fact.
Attorneys know this too. Like, I'm sure Andrew Esquire is probably, Andrew, call me. I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about. But you'll see that in the Amber Heard trial, right? I mean, you use the right language and people have a different impression because they don't care about facts. They care about impressions and perceptions. And so you use words like, abortion fanatics or abortion hobbyists. Why didn't you use that one? That would have been better, I think. Abortion hobbyists, abortion enthusiasts. Yes, it's like, hey, guys, let's go aborting today. Oh, good idea, man. I'm off work. Let's go on abort. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer.
People aren't having sex. That's the whole thing.
So-
The last half of the millennial.
Excuse me. So, the reason I shared this video with you guys first is because pair bonding is not only an aspect that affects, obviously, women, but it also affects men. Now, far less importantly is it to men because men are non-monogamous biologically. But what happens... And I have a whole other video, by the way, planned out for this rabbit hole. But we've seen in the past what happens when several societies of men and women stop having sex and stop being, what do we say, sexually mature, let's say. You'll see this if you do any historical accuracy. Go read up on the Roman Empire for a little bit, and you'll find out fairly quickly what happens when sexual liberation happens among people. But again, that's a whole other video for a whole other rabbit hole. But when men stop having sex, it affects pair bonding, and as we've discussed, pair bonding is how women and men attach to each other during sex. Okay, how frequently you have sex, who you have sex with. Even I would even argue the nature of the sex, right? Hookups and one night stands are one thing. In small once or twice types of ordeals, right? But when you start doing this hookup culture, which doesn't exist, right? Because we've seen this a lot in the red pill society. A lot of men will advocate that the dating scene is gone, and that hookup culture is now present. Well, as we can see by the numbers, hookup culture isn't even present because men aren't even having sex anymore, right? And I would venture to say that this number is going to rise drastically with the Roe versus Wade, and not just in regards to, butthurt men. But already as a man, and I'll put myself on the cross for a minute here, I'm already pretty picky about who I come in for the purposes of not only my own integrity, but also because I don't wear condoms. I'm allergic to latex and they're unpleasant to wear anyways. But now, more than ever, I have to, I mean, not that I have to, but I should be very much more inclined as to where my DNA goes. I mean, again, this is a concept that a lot of men aren't discussed or talked about growing up anymore, unfortunately. And that's something that we have to seek to change in our generation, and well, in our kids' generation growing up, is the conversation of, look, you're important, your dick's important, your cum's important, where you put it is important, and you shouldn't just be giving it to anybody, right? It's an amount of self-esteem. But the fact that so many men just aren't willingly having sex has a huge, huge, huge change on the, what's the word I'm looking for here? On the dynamic of raising children. Okay, so our kid, my daughter, and the single moms and their kids' generation, right? Our kids' generation growing up is going to have a drastically different view on sex and relationships if our generation, doesn't start shaping up and becoming self-aware and start becoming emotionally mature and sexually mature and going, okay, this is how things should be. Watch what I say, not what I do. Okay?
Anyways, I just wanted to start off with a couple of things here. One of the reasons, like the evolutionary reason why a woman's sexual past is important to guys, kind of like on this hindbrain subconscious level, is because we descended from men for whom it was very important to know what a woman's sexual past was. Who had she bred with before? Why is virginity something that is highly prized across cultures, across millennia of time, in every religion, particularly in the more patriarchal religions? Why is virginity highly prized? I don't know if you guys have seen these other videos out right now. I think somebody was showing me these in my Instagram, but it was this woman who was trying to make some sort of big public declaration about how she wasn't going to teach her daughter about virginity. Like, virginity is just a social construct. It's just something we made up. It's a product of the patriarchy, and virginity is not really a thing. It doesn't have any real definition or whatever. And I'm like, well, that is a term that has been created because it was reflecting something that was an objective truth. Why is an unspoiled and a virgin girl, why is that more valuable than a woman who wasn't? Well, there's a very simple evolutionary answer to that, which is,
we're going to pause it right here. Before he gives his answer, I got to rant for just a second. Historically, women couldn't get married if they weren't virgins. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of lefty types who might watch, my video or this types of content and go on a huge rampage about, you don't have a say over my body. And you can argue that point till you're blue in the face, and that's fine. But what women don't understand nowadays is that while women control who they fuck and have sex with, men control who you marry. If men control the mating and the dating aspect, and women control the sexual aspect, then it stands to reason that the old saying, why buy the milk, or why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free, OnlyFans, pornography, hookup culture, okay? If men can go get nudes or have sex, let's say, for free, then there's no need to commit for it. Now, this isn't a man's fault, let's say. Feminism, again, the recent uprising in feminism has taught women that they are equal and akin to men, which obviously is not true. But if women control the sexual market, then men control the marriage market. And I think a lot of women undervalue the importance of the only two things they bring to a relationship. There's only two. Sex and looks. Well, okay, three technically. The ability to procreate. But even then, most men aren't going to decline a woman who takes care of them and takes care of the family, the home, for the sake of babies. Now, because most men are typically non-monogamous anyways, and are cheaters, let's say, most men are going to have kids regardless of we'll call it the primary. regardless of the primary relationship, men will still procreate. That being said, they won't forego, they won't give up, and stop taking care of that primary partner, that primary woman, just because she can't bear him children. That is not an outlier for dismissing a woman. The important, crucial part is obviously your looks, how attractive you are, how well you take care of yourself, and then how good you have sex, how good you fuck, how well you take care of your man. So if those three things are basically the only real requirements that a woman needs versus men, you need money, you need power, you need social affirmation, you need to be a leader, you have to be mentally stable, right? You have to have a lot of ducks in a row before a woman is even remotely interested in you to begin with. So we just had to throw that out there real quick, because I know a lot of women will kind of get upset at this aspect of, oh, well, I don't need a man controlling my body or my sex life, and the sad reality is that you really do need to be controlled by a man. And it's not for any amount of sexism or control issues. It's because you need it, right? Women need this sort of control and boundaries in order to exist happily, and otherwise, if you leave women to their own devices, as we can see by feminism, we see a whole generation of women just fucking destroyed by this idea of equality and go do whatever you want. You're not adhered to a time frame. That sort of mentality.
The baby's your baby. That's why we had, because it was reflecting something that was an objective truth. Why is an unspoiled and a virgin girl, why is that more valuable than a woman who wasn't? Well, there's a very simple evolutionary answer to that, which is, the baby's your baby. That's why we had, emperors of dynastic China and the Forbidden City walling off, sections so that they could keep their harem, whatever we're calling it, to one side, where he's the only one that's breeding with them, and it's guarded by eunuchs who they cut their nuts off so that they can't go and actually reproduce with them. Because like I said, there's three things that have defined powerful men over the course of history. That is resources, that is territory, and that is exclusive access to virginic women. Okay? It doesn't matter if you're a king. It doesn't matter if you're in feudal Japan. It doesn't matter if you're just a tribal chieftain in the Amazon rainforest. Powerful men are defined by those three things. And that third thing, when we're talking about women and exclusive access to women, the reason why that's important is because that powerful man wants to spread his seed. He wants to have more babies that are like him so that he can reproduce with his superior DNA and go out into perpetuity. Okay. I don't think this is like rocket science. This isn't something that you need a degree to understand. So that's number one. Number two is like when we look at men who are jealous, when we look at men's jealousy, when we look at, I don't want to say envy, but like jealousy, there's a difference between envy and jealousy, by the way. Jealousy in this case, when we talk about mate guarding, when we talk about possessiveness, and like women will always constantly complain about it, possessiveness in men, and say, oh, he's over, or he's clingy, that kind of stuff. Or territorial. Those are behavioral traits that are part of mate guarding behavior. There's a variety. There's a whole bunch of different behaviors that are mate guarding behaviors. But the reason why men get jealous, for different things than women do when it comes to like infidelity or suspecting infidelity, is because men are interested in paternity. Because up until about the 1970s, when we could, determine through DNA whether the child was genetically related to that man or not, we had to take a woman's word. That's why in Jewish cultures it's matrilinear. So the child in Ashkenazi Jews and Hasidic Jews and in that culture, it is a matrilinear religion because only the women know that that's the kid, right? That's the only reliable source. So the concept of paternity for men has been such an important imperative, because if you are getting cuckolded, we laugh about being cuckolded now. Now it's kind of like this, joke kind of thing.
You're just like,
Exactly. We turn that into a joke, but the reason why it's funny, or the reason why we use it as an insult right now, is because what we're really saying is your DNA is going to go extinct.
Yep.
That's more or less what we're saying when we call somebody a cuckold. And that right there, as far as cuckoldry is concerned, men have always been concerned with paternity. That's why, like, kings have always been very concerned about, like, having a male heir.
Yep.
Emperors as well. And then that's also why we have a term like bastard. Like you're a motherless, fatherless child, right? You're a bastard child. The reason we have those terms is because paternity is so damn important to human males on planet Earth.
Yeah.
We want to know that the child is ours. And that's really where all of this comes down to. The conversation that we have in the Red Pill, that when the girls are here for an after-hour show or whatever, when we're talking about why is it that a woman's sexual past is important, what we're really talking about is paternity, and why is paternity important to men. And in the last, say, since the sexual revolution for sure, but from, like, say, 1965 up to where we are right now, that paternity has been devalued and debased, and it's been shamed, and you're an insecure man if you are concerned with a woman's sexual past. If you are a stepdad versus being a biological father, we need to get dads back in the home, but we're systematically removing them from the home until that kid becomes a criminal. And then what's the first question we ask? Where's the father, right?
Yeah.
That suddenly he's not so superfluous as you want to make him out to be. All of that goes back to one thing: paternity. Whose kid is it? And that's why this conversation is important, because paternity and the issue that we're talking about here, a woman's sexual past or her promiscuity, that kind of stuff, it all goes back, I should say, it's the root, let's just say, of a lot of other problems that we complain about constantly, or we get into, and we try to sort out, like, why is the marriage rate so low? Why is it that, like, I have guys all the time, you guys probably get it too, they'll ask me, Rolo, I want to have kids, but I don't want to get married, right? And I don't want a girl who's run through, or I'm going to go out. How often do you hear that? I want to go out to Southeast Asia and find a nice virgin bride, or I'm a Muslim and I want 4 wives, but they all have to be virgin wives. Why? Why is that? Why is that even a thing? So what's my religion? Yeah, but there's a function to that religion. There's a point to it. There's a latent purpose to you wanting an unspoiled, unblemished woman. It's in the Bible, it's in the Torah, it's in the Quran, it's in all kinds of other religious texts. Why is a virgin woman more valuable than a non-virgin woman? I use the Bible story, like when Jesus is at the well and the Samaritan woman comes there, and he says, I know all about all the men you've been with, prior to this, and I forgive you your sins and living water and all that. And she says, and he says, the man that you're living with right now is not your husband either, right? Yeah. Well, was Jesus a misogynist for bringing that up, for being concerned with her sexual past? Is that
toxically masculine?
Is he being toxically masculine? Because that was very important, certainly to that culture of that time, and it's still important today. And we don't know why we feel bad about feeling bad about a woman's sexual past. Yeah. So we'll get into some more of the details as to why that's a thing. But to sort of preface this whole conversation, we have to talk about paternity and why paternity is so important to men. Well, okay, what is the average body count of a woman who, say, like the 19-year-old girl to 29? And what is the average body count from the woman who is 29 to 39? What is the average body count? So we have to look at this demographically, because if you go and you say, okay, women between, I don't know, when women are having sex at 15 and they're done by 65, I don't know, whenever they hit menopause or whatever, right? On average. If you're going to take that all collectively as an aggregate, that average is going to be way different than the girls in different generations, the boomers, the Generation X, millennials, and Zoomers right now. Yep. What's the difference? Because if you look at the difference in, like, sexual frequency of Zoomers right now, that's going to be a whole different average than, say, my generation, like Generation X. Yep. So if you're going to take them all together and go, well, on average, women only have six sexual partners in their lifetime. That's the average, right? Does that make her a skank? Does that make her an unclean woman? Because if we're going to use that aggregate, then we have to look at it generationally, and then in that time frame, like between, say, ages, like I said, 15 and 29. Yep. Like what's that average right there? And by taking all that, it really kind of is neither here nor there, because they're all still going to be hypergamous, and men are still going to want to know that the baby is theirs as far as the mechanics are concerned. But when we start looking at hard numbers, you got to remember that average numbers don't tell the full picture.
Yeah.
So if I go and I say, well, like I said, all American women between 15 and 65, it might be 6 or 7. But if I go and I say, well, what about Generation X women or Zoomer women, and as compared to men even as well, like what's their average, and what's X average, and what's millennial average, and what's boomer average? If you're taking all those together, you also have to remember what is the societal conditions of those generations at that time. So when we say, like, people throw this at me all the time, and I wanted to make sure that I was clear about this, is that people will say, well, Rollo, the average woman only has 7 sexual partners in her life. Okay, well,
Nope.
What generation?
Mm-hmm.
What demographic cohort are we talking about, right?
And that's
you have to be very
self-reported, which you have to
specific
be-
about that.
yeah.
And the minute you are specific, they'll go, who hurt you?
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, but like you just got to be honest with the fact that like if women self-report it, they are going to lower the number.
Look, the
They are
numbers
going to lower the
on on these studies wouldn't be 21 plus if there weren't women with 21 plus.
Yeah.
Like, so what's the percentage of women with 21 plus, and what's the percentage of women with 6? Maybe that's the question we need to be asking.
Yeah, I'm not good at math, but bro, that's a lot of numbers.
Yeah.
Well, I
okay.
mean, because numbers, like, what do they say? There's lies, damn lies, and statistics. That's
Yeah.
that's the statistics part.
All right, so I'll finish these, then we'll get into the second part. So okay, so we got Dila01. So how do you estimate her count? I only know she's been says a low number, but then goes crazy in bed. She's lying out. LOL. What else, man? You just got to look at.
Maybe you
habits
brought
and-
it out
You
of her.
can't really know by numbers because you can't really dictate that. You weren't there, bro. But you can go by actions, like you said earlier.
Yeah.
If a girl
Someone-
wilds out on you, does that mean she's like done it with other guys, or is she just that into it with you?
Never know. Someone Bams 94 $5. Thank you so much. Noah King. Hey Rolo, do you believe TikTok is worse than Instagram?
Yes.
With hurting the dating market.
Yes.
Yeah,
Let
definitely
me think
could.
about that. Yes.
Yeah,
Wando?
I'm not gonna hold you.
TikTok is for children.
Literally a place where women go to either drop tips, vent, or talk about their experience with men, and it can poison the average girl's mindset because this must be true. It's on TikTok.
TikTok is worse than the red pill.
Look at Long Beach Griffin here. Body count does not matter. Shots our guy Long
Shout
Beach
to you,
Griffin,
bro.
man.
By the way, Body Count is a great band, by the way. I know Juan Garcia, who is the guitarist in that, and Ice-T is still doing it to this day.
Body count.
Wando, from one punch too many to one notch too many. Okay.
One Punch Man.
$20 Sleepy Joe. My female friend did the whole City Girls thing. She said she eventually started seeing spirits and was being tormented by some dark goddess named Lilith. Now she has to take meds. Note to self, no female friends. Okay. And then the Ninja Watcher, crazy 304s deserve less. Okay.
Shit crack.
So so now we're going to talk about pair bonding, guys. And just to make this very clear, we're talking about pair bonding, guys. We're not talking about the clinical definition of pair bonding. We're talking about pair bonding from the perspective of a woman being able to have a meaningful, healthy relationship with a man in a long-term, romantic manner. That's what we mean, whether it's marriage or whatever it is. That's what we're talking about. Okay.
So when she got to that point in there where she's talking about pair bonding, now, by the way, the reason I even made this sort of a bullet point on today's show was because this is the new hotness. This is the new, there's no such thing as an alpha. There's no such thing as pair bonding. That's what it's sort of this distraction, right? It's this, it's not even a straw man, because I don't think I've ever used the term pair bonding, but she was saying in her thing that, well, I was looking at some of the comments, and they were talking about, women can't pair bond. Well, those aren't my words. Those are the words of the commenters. So that's number one. Number two is pair bonding doesn't follow. All right. This is what's called, it's not even straw man, because I didn't say anything. So to straw man in the first place, it's what's called a non sequitur. It doesn't follow. Nobody is saying this. I just said marital happiness. Marital stability. Is that pair bonding? That's the question that I'm asking, because when I talk about alpha and people go, oh, there's no such thing as an alpha unless it's an alpha female, and then we want to, oh yes, alpha female, right? We need to clarify terms, because are we talking about marital happiness? Are we talking about pair bonding? Are we talking about rates of depression? By what metric do we want to show that women with higher body counts suffer from these things, right? So when we start looking at what pair bonding is, she's using a term that's like sort of this scientific term that is mostly relatable to, like, swans on the lake, like I was saying before, some like species of field mice that like stay together forever. And it's not even so much a scientific term. in the sense that these guys are using it. They're just using it as sort of this placeholder term for marital stability, depression, happiness, incidents of divorce. Maybe all of that comes together as pair bonding. Who knows? But to be fair, I was run up the flagpole for not having my stats in a 30-second video. So, but I was detail oriented enough to do a screen cap of when she was talking about. I went and I looked at this study right here about pair bonding, and pair bonding is bullshit. So your whole argument is bullshit. Really? Okay. Non sequitur does not follow. Everything that we were talking about just up to this point with the stats that we've just put out there, if you're going to say, oh, that doesn't matter because you guys were talking about pair bonding to begin with. No, we weren't.
Exactly.
Okay.
The deflection is strong.
So it's a reframe because she doesn't know what she has she has no data to say anything else. But I did look this up. So I'm looking at I'm like, where the hell did she get this stuff? Right. And she says the study and I blew this up. I've got it right here just so you guys can see that this is what I'm reading from that her screen cap here. It says the study demonstrates.
Can we pull that up on screen right now?
Well, I don't know if you can because I didn't give it to. Anyways, that's the.
Yeah, if you put it on Telegram, Chris can get it.
All right, I'll push it over there and just. It's easier if I just read it.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, the study demonstrates, and this is from her video. The study demonstrates mathematically how that the most commonly proposed theories for the transition to human pair bonding are not biologically feasible. Oh, who's saying this? Where's this study? I have there's no link, there's no reference. She didn't say, oh, I read this study and here it is in the background. Okay, well, if you're going to come at me and say, I don't have any fucking data, then it's incumbent upon you to at least put that in the links or your comments or whatever the hell it is. Because if you're going to quote that and say, this is the fucking gospel truth, I want to see what you're quoting.
Yeah.
You want to see what I'm quoting? We just gave it to you. There's the IFF studies and we just gave you the Atlantic. I got dozens more on top of that. We're giving you the hard data.
Yep.
Okay. You want to have this? You want to come at me and say, oh, he's got a greasy ponytail. Great. Fine. But if you're going to come at me, come correct.
Yeah.
And that's why we're doing what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Okay. You better come correct. Because if you don't come correct, I'm going to own your ass just like I'm about to right here. Jeez. Okay. So, however, the study advances a new model showing the transition to pair bonding can occur when female choice and faithfulness, among other factors, don't know what those are included. The result is an increased emphasis on provisioning females over male competition for mating. And that's about the best I can read of this. Where did this come from? Where's your data set? Show your fucking work. Where is it? I don't see it. Because you're going to come at me and say, oh, there's no studies. And your 6.6 million TikTok followers are going to take your word as gospel in between every, 12-year-old giggle, right? Okay, fine. But show me your work. You say, I don't cite sources. Where's your sources? Yeah. Because this looks like bullshit.
So, a woman's sexual history matters for pair bonding. And what is pair bonding? Pair bonding is the ability of men and women obviously being able to bond together, okay? And without looking at any studies, and we can go through that. I might do that later. Probably not. We'll see. We'll see how late this video runs. But the more partners a woman has, the harder it is for her to pair bond. Because men are naturally, biologically inclined to be non-monogamous, sex for men is different than sex for women. As we've discussed, sex is important to men for the purposes of procreation and for basically bearing children, furthering the bloodline. Sex is important for women, not just for the procreation of her bloodline, but also for an emotional attachment. Now, that's not to say that men don't need an emotional connection as well. We can see this clearly. We've seen plenty of Andrew Tate's videos. We've seen lots of cam videos where we've seen men being talked down from suicide by cam girls. I know a couple girls who have done OnlyFans in the past, and I can tell you now, as someone who has been very intimate in the past with women who have OnlyFans, well, why, it would stand to reason you'd ask, well, why would men pay for OnlyFans when you could just watch porn and jerk off for free? The problem isn't that the sex is free or paid for. What men are paying for in OnlyFans is the interaction. Men are paying for validation, for attention, right? You could jerk off to some porn, and yes, it fires off the neuro chemicals in your brain, and you'll get a rush of this and that, and you'll feel better perhaps. But you're missing the integral part of pair bonding. You're missing the integral part of sex, and that is the bonding part. You are missing the human interaction, the stroking of said woman's hair, the stroking of said woman's face, the connection of simple naked flesh, right? The conversation. So I certainly don't mean to say that sex for its purposes of intimacy are no less important for men than they are women. It just serves a different purpose for men. That's why men can go fuck 5 to 10 different women a night and still come home and love his wife, because for men, sex is simply sex for the most part, as a general blanket statement, whereas for women, sex is an emotional connection. It's a connection on a much deeper level, let's say. It's the emotional validation of sorts. So how women view sex and treat sex versus how men view and treat sex are two very different conversations. Definitely not on equal footings at all compared to each other.
Welcome to Better Bachelor. This is Joker with a face for radio and a voice for print. Tonight, I'm going to talk about the science of pair bonding, the science behind when a woman has many partners in her past versus when a guy has many partners in his past. Many times, guys are known to be, throughout time, to be the ladies' man, the guy that can go out and get lots of dates, and he's very popular with the women, but then he settles down, he gets married, he has a family, and supposedly all goes well. Of course, it always doesn't, but supposedly. But when a woman does this, well, it's frowned upon, and it's bad actions, right? But let's break down the science of this, and let's show why there is a difference between a woman and a man in their dating past. It's a very touchy subject, but we have to touch on it because this is why so many men have problems when women come forward and say, I've had X amount of partners, and it's a relatively high number or very high number. This is why guys get uncomfortable and they don't like it. But let's get into this a little bit. Now, first I'll hit the recording here. And yes, there is a social stigma with this, but even if that passes, there's still science here. So I came across this post on Reddit. Everything I'm going to skim over, there's a lot to go over here, but I'm not going to dive too deep. I'm going to touch on the important subjects or the important parts of it. If there's a lot of choppy editing, it's because I got into something that went too deep. I don't want to make this an hour-long video tonight, but I'll leave all the links down below here if you want to check it out and read a little bit deeper on the subject. So on Reddit, and this is what got me down this rabbit hole. On Reddit, a young lady posts and says, I have only one partner. It is my current boyfriend, and I'm happy. But later on, if I decide to have fun, and she's familiar with the men's kind of theory on this stuff and red pill stuff, she says, I don't want to be labeled as a bad person for having a long list of history, and she's only at one. But she says, I'm uncomfortable with the idea that my past matters to other people. Why can't it just be me doing what I want and so on and so forth? She does have a great line in here, though. She says, I hate that my intimacy isn't my own. I hate that anything I try now will become part of my, quote, history, something that I'm morally obliged to disclose to any future partners, and then it's up to them to decide what they think of it. The fact that she went so far to say she is morally obligated to tell them about her past, big thumbs up to her. She's at one boyfriend, one partner, and so she's thinking about this.
And she's sexually
and that
accountable.
If she does go kind of crazy, she says,
she's accountable.
I'm morally obligated to tell them, my future partners. I think that's great. It's a great attitude to have. It's the right attitude to have. But now we're going to dive into why so many men are uncomfortable in relationships and with the number of partners that some women are having out there, and how you start heading down the slope. Now, a lot of this, guys don't necessarily know this in their front brain, but I'm going to explain kind of how we feel about it as we get in on it here. So first thing from psychologicalscience.org, a 48-hour intimacy afterglow. Now, afterglow is their word. It's not my thing, but they say a 48-hour intimacy afterglow helps bond partners over time. And it says intimacy plays a central role in reproduction. It can be pleasurable, but scientific findings suggest that it may serve an additional purpose, bonding partners together. A study of newlywed couples published in Psychological Science, a journal of the Association for Psychological Science, indicates that partners experience an afterglow that lasts for up to 2 days, and this afterglow is linked with relationship quality over the long term. I'm going to skip down here because, like I said, we have a lot to go over. It says, on average, participants reported having intimacy on 4 of the 14 days of the study, so once about every 3 days, and answers vary considerably across participants. Importantly, intimacy on a given day was linked with lingering satisfaction over time. Having intimacy on a given day was linked with satisfaction that same day, which was also linked with satisfaction the next day and even 2 days after. In other words, participants continued to report elevated intimacy satisfaction 48 hours after a single act. And it says overall participants' marital satisfaction declined between the beginning of the study and the follow-up session 4 to 6 months later. But participants who reportedly had relatively high levels of intimacy afterglow seemed to fare better relative to their peers, reporting higher initial marital satisfaction and less steep declines in satisfaction across the first 4 to 6 months of marriage. So, and they go on to in deeper. Again, I'll leave this below. But basically what they're saying is if you are close with your partner every 2 or 3 days, it keeps the bond tighter. It keeps more satisfaction in the relationship. However, we often know, as guys, we know this, it's not just a joke that's been around since forever, that once you say you do, she doesn't. That over time, that wanes and that goes away. And as that goes away, the bond that you two have starts to weaken. This is what they call, so in this one, what I'm trying to basically get across is that bond does mean importance, it means closeness, and it means a satisfaction in the relationship. So that bond means something.
Absolutely. And like I just got done saying, pair bonding is it's no less important for men than it is women. And by pair bonding, I mean the ability to bond through sexual gratification and the amount of partners. I wouldn't say that that's any less important for men. It's definitely different, though, for men. Does that make sense?
But this is to both people, both men and women. We're not at the differences yet. It's still important to both. Next, how the love hormone works its magic. Now, this is where we start separating the guys from the gals on this one. It says a whiff of oxytocin lit up a reward center in men's brains when they looked at their partner's face. Scientists and women everywhere have long wondered exactly what keeps a man from straying with a stranger. From a biological perspective, at least, cheating is easy to understand. The more partners a man has, the more likely he'll pass on his genetic material. Correct. So why do many men settle down, get married, and stick around to raise their kids? Researchers think they may have found a clue in oxytocin, a hormone released during intimacy and other intimate gestures like hugging or holding hands that's been proven to strengthen social bonds in other mammals. They found that the hormone appears to boost men's attraction to their mate even when presented with pictures of other women. The findings are published this week's issue of Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. In the study, 20 men who were in committed relationships for 28 months on average took whiffs of either oxytocin, nasal spray, or an inactive placebo spray. For the first test, men looked at pictures of their partner, a woman they'd never met, or a house. The photos of the women were carefully matched so that one was not more attractive than the other. In the second experiment, they looked at pictures of their partners or of women they knew but were not related to, perhaps someone they saw at work every day. Then the men rated the attraction they felt to the various faces. Men consistently rated their partners as being more attractive and arousing than other women, and, in most cases, a whiff of oxytocin boosted that effect compared to the placebo. But what really fascinated the researchers was what happened inside the men's brains. Under the influence of oxytocin, 2 areas of the brain responsible for feelings of reward and pleasure lit up when men saw their partners' faces, but the sight of other women had the opposite effect, suppressing feelings of pleasure. Oxytocin triggers the reward system to activate on the partner's face the presence of the partner, said the study said Dr. Rien Hurlman, a professor of psychiatry at the University of Bonn in Germany. The monogamy is actually quite costly for males, so there must be some form of mechanism binding males and females together, at least for some time. There must be...
We got to stop it for here for a second. Sexual monogamy is actually quite costly for males, so there must be some form of mechanism binding males and females together, at least for some time. Now, as we've already discussed, monogamy is not a natural state of existence for males, due to the fact that males have the biological requirement, let's say, or the want, I don't know if you can call it a need, but the want to further bloodline, whereas for women, it's not stronger or worse, it's not stronger or weaker to pass on the bloodline. It's a different thing altogether. That being said, males give up, not freedom, but it's a costly thing for males to give up. If I could talk, it's costly for males in regards to perpetuating their bloodline by being monogamous. And you could argue all you want. Oh well, that's how it's meant to be. The Bible says it. Society says it. You know, one man, one woman. That's how it's supposed to be. If you're cheating, you're a scumbag. Blah blah blah. The fact of the matter is that high-value men, very masculine men, you see, I mean, I wouldn't even say movie stars, but highly masculine, highly endeavored, highly paid men, not only are they not monogamous, but they're also very picky about who they sleep with. Will Smith, I mean, that's a bad example. Will's a cuck. But Robert Downey Jr., Sean Connery, I can't remember the two of them off the top of my head, Christian Bale, but the other 2 James Bond actors, okay? These very prominent men, they're definitely not monogamous. Okay, and that's not to justify the average man being a cheater, but what I am saying is that men of high value, men of high goals and ideals and self-respect are not monogamous, and should they choose to be monogamous, you lower your chances at kids. Now, that being said, I have a good friend who lives here in town. I've been friends with his family for a long, long time. And they're younger than I am, by the way, my friend and his wife. They're much younger than I am. I want to say he's 28, 29. His wife's somewhere in her lower to mid-20s. They've been married since high school. I mean, I think they're Mormon. I'm pretty sure there's a lot to do with it, too. But they have, last time I checked, they have 3 boys and now a girl between them, before they're both the age of 30. That is a perfect example of a man giving up his natural, let's call it, his natural species, his natural tendencies to choose to be monogamous, and has been rewarded with it. Well, so far, I don't know the specific dynamic of their relationship. I don't live with them. I don't know them like that. Okay, I don't know the inner workings of their relationship and how they get along on a day-to-day basis. But she obviously likes him enough to not only marry him and carry his last name, but to also give him 3 sons and a girl. That's no small thing, and especially in today's society, okay? So bear in mind, there's a lot of implications that come with this information, Okay.
Be some benefit, and reward is actually the strongest motivation underlying human behavior. An expert who was not involved in the study said the results suggest that couples who keep a high level of intimacy in their relationships can maintain stronger bonds. When you're first becoming intimate, you're releasing lots of dopamine and oxytocin. That creates the link between neural systems that are processing your facial cues, your voice, and the reward system of a partner's brain, said Larry Young, a professor of psychiatry at Emory University in Atlanta. He studies the role of oxytocin in social bonding. So you can see where we're going with this, right? But specifically, men have this oxytocin release. Now, both partners do, but men, it bonds them closer to the women. And that in the other studies that I've read, and they may mention it in this one, I don't recall, but the reason being is because men naturally want to hit it and quit it. Nature tells them, hey, the more you can procreate, the more your DNA gets out there and the more offspring you'll have.
Correct.
That is a male's imperative by nature, by biology. So what keeps them from doing this is, number one, social norms, and number two, the bonding that occurs when they're with one single partner. So it's kind of been designed that a guy will always have the drive to be with multiple, but once he's bonded with a woman, as they say here, the attraction to other women actually decreases, so long as his needs are being met by his main partner.
That's important. That's important. A man will remain monogamous for the most part through two factors, okay? One being the levels of oxytocin he receives from his spouse. Well, I guess it kind of underlies one, not two reasons, but the oxytocin that he receives from his partner, his wife, his girlfriend, whatever the case is. But really, what keeps a man monogamous is your ability to please said man, is your want to please said man. Okay. Now, again, sexual monogamy is an earned feature for men. As men, you have to earn your monogamy by means of being strong, being fast, being intelligent, having good genes, taking care of yourself, right? Being socially interactive, being intelligent. There's a lot of things that men have to go through the process of before they receive the attention and attraction of a woman, right? Whereas women tend to just get it, right? And especially, I would argue nowadays, if only due to the monogamous norms that society has perpetuated on men, that, oh, I knocked her up. Well, I at least have an obligation to the child, right? I might not be with you forever per se, but I at least have a integral part of my child's life. And we see this a lot more now than ever. Well, not really. I can't even argue that because, as we can see, the rate of marriages has declined so drastically over the last 20 years that, it's almost not even a normal thing to get married anymore, right? So, as long as a man's needs are being met, he has no need to go elsewhere. We've talked about that several times in plenty of videos, where for the average guy, average men will not stray. Not only because of a mindset that is rooted in scarcity, but also because if I'm getting it at home, let's say, if I'm getting it home from my wife, normally, regularly, then I have no need to go elsewhere for it, right? Same as women, just in the same regard as women. If women are getting their needs met from their men, right? If men are masculine, if husbands are masculine, if they're sexually dominant, if they're non-sexually dominant, if they're making the money and doing their job, their gender role in the home, women have no need to go look elsewhere, right? But when you start becoming complacent, when you start, I wouldn't say cheating, but when you start cheating and you're not the man, when you start not producing children, okay, when you start settling in your mentality and your behaviors, well, of course a woman's going to go look elsewhere. You can't blame them. They're hypergamous. That's how they are, right? But that does apply to men too. If a man's not receiving what he needs, at the very least sexually, he is going to look elsewhere. He has no reason not to.
Continue on. As time goes on and couples become less intimate, Young noted that the linkage can decay. But activities that release oxytocin, such as really looking into another person's eyes, holding hands, kissing, and having intimacy, may help restore the connection. To me, it suggests there may be a way to help prevent the decay that can occur that leads to couples to separate. I think this is the only reason we do hug and touch each other all the time. I think this is the mechanism that keeps oxytocin levels in high relationships. So, why do men go astray sometimes? Because this bonding is breaking down. Why is the bonding breaking down? The intimacy has gone away. And so as long as, and I can't say this in all cases, but again, it seems to show that as long as a man is close to a woman, whether he's married to her or dating her for a long term, and she is providing the intimacy that keeps that bond strong, he finds her more attractive and other women less attractive. So his desire for other mates actually goes down so long as he's with a good partner. So there is a bonding from the male to the female, but we don't know of the reverse. Actually, we do. I did it in another video a long, long time ago, but we'll get there. Moving on. This is an article from the medinstitute.org, and I'll scroll up here, pair bonding in the brain. There's a specific, now this is a study on voles, but they found that voles are very similar to humans in both the way they bond and pair bond, and they've used them for a very long time. So let me dive into this. And again, if you want to get deeper into it, I'll leave this all below. The neurophysiology of pair bonding is very complex, which makes it difficult to explain in layman's language. That is one reason that Hooked has been such a popular read. The authors were able to break down for parents and others concerned adults these difficult brain processes in an understandable, relatable way. However, as the explanations get passed on by word of mouth, the pitfall of oversimplification can quickly turn to misunderstanding and inaccuracy. As people become familiar with oxytocin, a neurochemical that is critically involved with bonding, a common erroneous theme emerged that oxytocin production decreased with repeated closeness, and thus people who had repeated closeness with multiple partners no longer had the ability to bond with partners due to a lack of oxytocin. The truth is that people can damage their ability to bond, but it is not because of a decrease in oxytocin production. It is a much more complicated process involving brain molding, other neurochemicals, and higher brain functions. Our behavior actually changes our brain. The connections between neurons that are stimulated by our actions increase with more use and decrease with less use. When a couple engages in close bedroom behavior, neurotransmitters such as oxytocin, vasopressin, and dopamine stimulate formation of synaptic connections in the brain associating the pleasure of intimacy with the partners involved, encouraging them to bond and have more intimacy together, leading to the beginning of a family unit.
I got to pause it right here again.
And I'm going to jump down to the last.
So we've just found out oxytocin, along with several other chemicals, are released during intercourse, during sexual gratification. Okay. So if that's the case, then why is there an argument being had that masturbation or frequent masturbation rather is bad for men specifically, but women too? And the argument is that, well, it's not bad. It's actually very healthy. And I personally would argue that there is, I can't really put a number on it, maybe once a week, once a month, okay? There is an amount of stimulation that we need as men to continue being happy. I don't know anybody who has in the past partaked in semen regression who was ever healthy. At least those who participated in semen regression for long periods of time, they definitely weren't mentally healthy. But when you give yourself, let's say, shots of oxytocin from rubbing one out 2-3 times a day, 2-3 times a week even, the problem is that you It's like pot, right? Or alcohol, right? When you give your brain an amount of chemical, caffeine is another perfect one. I just got done having a Red Bull with cranberry juice and oat milk. Lots of caffeine, not including my cup of coffee this morning. When you get used, when your body gets used to a certain chemical, it starts needing more of it to become to feel regular, right? So when you rub one out 3 times a week, and you're used to shooting yourself up with this oxytocin, it means that you can't function normally without said addiction, without said chemical, right? So the danger for men, at least for men, is that you run the risk of overstimulating yourself to the point of not being able to enjoy intercourse with a woman. Specifically, you won't be able to pair bond with a woman, right? That's why this is such a buzzword, a hot topic nowadays of semen retention, semen regression, or I think it's semen retention is the term that's used now. No FAP, okay? It becomes very dangerous for men who FAP regularly to not be able to pair bond, right? So just as equally as it's dangerous for women to have multiple partners, because you saturate your brain with oxytocin, you then, over a course of years, okay, well, let's just use one of my exes, for example. So when I had met her, she had, and this is just that I'm aware of, she had one partner at a young age, got pregnant by him, lost the baby, got pregnant by him, slept with him. There was another dude who was in the military who she at least gave head to, and then, took off to her girlfriend's house, threw up, whatever. And then there was another fella, what was his name? Cody, I think was his name. So there was at least 3 dudes that I'm aware of before me. While she was with me, she slept with 1, 2, 3, maybe 4. We'll just call it 3. So 7 men. Now 8 men, at least. I don't know if there's more. By the time this woman is 32, 31, 30, 29, 28, 27. By the time she's 27, she would have had 8 partners. Now, in my opinion, and I don't know the numbers on this, I haven't looked up these numbers that we're seeing on the screen, but I would venture to say 8 partners by late 20s is pretty impressive. And obviously, the older she gets, assuming she doesn't settle down and marry anytime soon, the higher that number gets. And this is why we talk about, a woman's sexual history being so important. This is why we discuss pair bonding and being so important, is because we'll average it at 8 partners, okay? If she's had 8 partners by the time she's 27, then that would have meant by 27, by 20, 27, by 34, assuming, again, she's not married and doesn't have any kids by then, by the time she's 34, she would have had 16-ish partners, give or take. The older you get, and as we've already discussed, women have an expiration date. We're all aware of this. 30 is really about it. That's the cutoff. That number becomes increasingly more important the older said woman gets. So it's dangerous. As dangerous as it is for women to have multiple partners, it's equally dangerous for men to partake in the fapping, to partake in the lack of intercourse willingly, or maybe even not willingly, right? As we see a lot, and I mean a lot of men are not having sex anymore. Some by choice, most of them not by choice. Thank you, feminism. But it is equally dangerous for men to partake and the fapping just as it is for women to engage in multiple partners. I just wanted to make that clear. It's not what's good for one is good for the gander, but kind of.
Paragraph here, because I think this is the one that's most related. However, when an individual chooses to engage in casual intimacy, breaking bond after bond with each new partner, the brain forms a new synaptic map of one-night stands. This pattern becomes the new normal for the individual. When and if the individual later desires to find a more permanent partner, the brain mapping will have to be overcome, making a permanent bond more difficult to achieve. Right. Often the individual is not aware that the brain is adapted to the behavior pattern, and she begins to think, this is just the way I am, further reinforcing the pattern. In conclusion, research on bonding continues to support previous research showing that the brain is strongly influenced by bedroom behaviors. Dopamine pathways, as well as oxytocin and vasopressin and other neural symptoms, are important factors in the information or the formation of bonds. When a person engages in an intimate behavior, there are consequences above and beyond the possibility of unwanted pregnancy and STIs. Bonding with this intimate partner is one of those results. So, here's what we have. Guy goes out, he has his fun, but he does have problems with bonding. However, he is genetically predisposed to do this. Men are hardwired to go out and roam and try to spread the seed, so to speak. So he's kind of doing what biology expects him to do. Thus, it's not rewiring him the same way. And once he does find one partner to be with, the pattern of bonding is not enough to overcome, at least is the way I've read it. You guys can read it and tell me if you think differently. The pattern of what he has done and his having his fun does not override the oxytocin and the bonding that he gets with his partner that he actually chooses to stay with, so long as he's continually getting that afterglow, as they called it, or every couple of days he gets his kind of his satiation. He gets his needs met. So because a man's predisposed to do that, it doesn't bother him as much to do so. It still doesn't ruin his bonding ability for a woman, because biology has kind of designed it to make this bond happen, to stop the man from going out and doing what males normally do in the wild. For a woman, however, she does not have that same bonding mechanism, and after multiple partners here, as they express, she does not have the same ability to overcome that habit or that broken bond, the way the neurotransmitters or the pathways have made themselves because of the repeated bad behavior. There is nothing to help her overcome that. Correct. And so she has to just do it by sheer will. There isn't a biology, because women weren't designed to do this, at least according to what I've read. Now, this is from pauldavidphd.com. This is a PDF that I was looking over. And let me see if I can go up to the top and read his beginning here. It's a long read. Pair bonding, an evolutionary perspective on intimacy. And this is down here. I just highlighted this again because I'm keeping them short. But please, good reads. Again, for intimacy to be optimal, all four dimensions, intimacy, romance, friendship, and attachment, need to be incorporated into human pair bonding. That's why alternatives like polyamory are going to have a limited viability. In an effort to do away with exclusivity, partners in this alternative reserve the right to have multiple intimate relationships with the proviso that they also have full knowledge of their partner's other intimate involvements. By doing away with exclusivity, the alternative seeks to minimize the problems of dishonesty and boredom that so often rise in monogamy. However, while minimizing some of these problems, the active couples are often confronted with other major difficulties in the form of possessiveness and jealousy that typically arise in the pursuit of extradiactic relationships. The reality is that all forms of mating favor some aspects of intimacy at the expense of others. The challenge is being able to form relationships that enable the integrated balance of intimacy, romance, friendship, and attachment. While exclusive monogamy certainly favors the human need for long-term attachment, this form of bonding also provides the most possibilities for integrating mature, intimate romance, friendship, and intimate relationships as the more primary form of bonding. Attachment provides the essential structure through which all of those other needs can be met over the course of an intimate relationship. Putting it in another way, without the attachment, security, and continuity involved in the exclusive monogamy, humans are limited in the extent to which they can integrate and sustain a healthy bedroom, romance, friendship, and intimate relationships. For better or worse, this appears to be our evolutionary fate as humans. Okay, lots of science there. I know that was a lot to chew through, and I'm not even going to get to the last page that I have here. But here's the whole science that they talk about, is that multiple partners by both parties don't really end up doing very well. The divorce rates are higher. The satisfaction in future relationships are not as much. However, because men primarily have this wired into our DNA to try to go out and have as many sire as many offspring as we can, it's kind of already in our DNA to do this. And there is actually, it appears to be, overrides in the brain that will help a guy bond to one person that he becomes close to. The female of almost all species, but also women, are not naturally designed to have so many partners, because before the invention of the pill, women would get pregnant, and they would not have a way to, if they didn't have a male or a village or someone to protect them and provide for them while they were in this state, there was a real danger that not only she but her offspring would not survive. So they were more careful to try to make sure to get the best guy they could get, both DNA, health, strength, prosperity, whoever could take care of them and their young the best. And they would try to get that one male to stop being with many and just be with her. But if she was successful in providing him the intimacy that he needed, and he started to feel close to her and bonded to her, there was a chemical reaction that would help him bond to her. But women do not have this, because they weren't designed to just freely go about like men do. And so they don't have many of the science biological wiring to help them rebond with a single individual.
Of course not.
Thus, if she gets in the habit of partner after partner after partner in short term where they're meaningless and there's nothing behind them, the chemicals will actually rewire in the brain to say this is normal and this is what you should be doing. Then when she decides to be with just one partner or settle down, that desire to keep going and finding other partners and feels like normal to them. It feels like this is what is expected, and it's not a conscious thought. It's the chemical wiring in the brain. They don't have the backup system of the bonding to one individual like the man does. That's why many men can be playboys, still find a wonderful woman, decide to settle down and have a family, and not wander, so long as their needs in the bedroom are being met. This isn't in all cases, but it's primarily, it seems to be the case, because again, men were hardwired for this. However, when a woman does the same, there isn't that reuptake of the oxytocin and some of the other wiring that happens to help that woman bond to the man in the same way. Which is why many times it is said that men will always love women, their woman, more than the woman will love a man. Even if he's the only woman, or even if he's the only man that she's ever been with, it's designed so that if he were to not survive or not make it or not be a suitable partner anymore, she can shift her allegiance over to someone new that provides the things that she needs for her and her offspring and can care for this person. Not to the same degree as the man does her, but to some degree, so long as he provides what she needs for her and her offspring.
Hold on. I got to pause this for just a second because this is also important. This is why in most of these videos that I do, and we do in the Red Pill Society, I can't stress this enough. You can't hate women for being hypergamous. It is in their nature. They are meant to be this way. I could be the smartest, most handsome, rich, filthy fucking rich dude on the face of the earth. But if I die, my protection is gone. My intimacy is gone. My sex is gone. My funds are gone. My protection is gone. Okay? She has no choice but to take our baby, our child, our children, and go find another man to go take care of her and said baby, said babies, said children. You can't hate women for being hypergamous. That does not mean that you shouldn't be aware that they are hypergamous. Most men aren't. I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. If you're not on point, another man will be. That's how it goes. That's how women are designed. That being said, women also have to become aware of their boundaries. This is also why we teach hypergamy not just to men, but to women, because the women who watch this kind of content, the women who watch my content, need to be aware and be wary of the fact that the more partners that you engage with, the harder it's going to become for you to pair bond. That's why in today, right now, in 7/8/22, okay, 2022, sorry. Currently, in half the world's population, women are mocked for not being virgins upon entering marriage. Not so long ago, probably 100 years, I mean, if I really had to put a number on it, around 100 years ago, in almost every other part of the world, you couldn't get married if you weren't a virgin. Why? Why? What's the matter? What's the matter? Who I sleep with is only my business. Well, we've just seen the statistics. We've just seen the medical background for the reasoning. The more partners you have, the harder it is for you to attach. The harder it is to be faithful. The harder it is to... And it's not even about... I mean, it is about the faithfulness for men, but... Let's pretend for a minute that you've had 10 partners before you got married. You've had 10 partners, as a woman, that is. So, directed at the women who might watch this. Pretend for a moment that you had 10 partners before you got married. And of those 10, 5 were just utter dog shit. They couldn't find the clip. They didn't know how to do the, all the business. They were just 30 seconds and done. Okay, then let's say the other 5 were rock solid. They pulled your hand, they put your ankles behind your ears, gave you the time of your life, taught you how to squirt, taught you how to do all this magnificent stuff. 10 partners. Now you're 25 and you're married. You find your husband, you find the man that you want to settle down with, you want to bear children for, blah, blah, blah. However, this man, 6 months after you get married, says, hey, by the way, how many partners have you had? And you go, 10? A very, very, very long, well, I mean, not so long ago, that mattered a lot. And it mattered because you know better. Okay? And of those 10 men, the husband would be the 11th, of course. Let's say your husband sits in the middle of that scale. Okay? Now, I understand what hypergamy is. Let's pretend that this man in this example does not know what hypergamy is walking into this marriage. He is average in size. He is average in all aspects of his life. He's not super fantastic like 5 of the men that you slept with, but he's also not complete dog shit like the other 5 of the men that you slept with. He sits comfortably in the middle. He's okay. And let's pretend that he's also pretty mediocre in regards to his ideals in his endeavors in life. Okay. He doesn't have any high pursuits in being a king or being a landowner, perhaps. He has no ideology in rising up in the ranks of politics. He's okay being a good father and being a farmer, let's say. we have statistics, we have the proof to provide that over the course of 4 to 8 years into that marriage, that woman, you in this example, are going to get bored. You're going to get bored very quickly, and the higher part of the hypergamy aspect, the higher factor in that disqualifying of him processes is due to these sexual partners, is due to the fact that you look back in 8 years of that marriage and go, you know what? I've had some other men who know how to rock it pretty good, and it's been 8 years with the same winky dink. This is kind of Take that same perspective, though, and let's pretend for a moment, in another example, that you're now that you're a virgin walking into this. Maybe you're Mormon, or it doesn't matter. You have had no sexual partners. You're 25. You have been taught correctly that it is your job to hold on and preserve your value. Sure, you know what masturbation is. Maybe you've, played with yourself a couple times, whatever. But you've never had a man inside of you. You've never had that level of intimacy with a man because you're aware that not only leads to babies, but it also leads to a very severe form of pair bonding. So you've held on to that. You now meet the same man. Mind you, you don't know he's mediocre in bed. But let's pretend you meet we'll call him an average guy, okay? Because most men are pretty average. And I would argue that that's not very healthy. But he's an average fellow. He's not very big. He's not very small. He's not very girthy. He's not terrible. He sits comfortably in the middle. He's not super kinky dinky, but he's also not, 2 chumps and I'm done kind of guy, right? Same guy, pretty mediocre, average endeavors. He's perfectly fine being a farmer. He's perfectly fine being a laborer, okay? He works. He keeps himself busy. He's not a lazy ass, right? But he also isn't very high in ideals. He's average. You are more than likely to pair bond with the same man much better because of the lack of partners, because of the lack of, I've had all these other, you don't know any better, right? You don't know any better. So you're happy with what you have. That's a crucial crutch in today's dating market, in today's dating world, is that, I don't approve of birth control anyways, but condoms and birth control have, along with the internet, of course, and many other factors, have destroyed modern dating, because you could walk into a situation, as sex is meant to create children, okay, or, well, not meant to, but one of the many repercussions, I won't call it consequences, children are never, ever, ever consequences. I want to make sure that that's deathly clear. Children are never consequences. But you walk into an act, an endeavor, that has the repercussions of children. Well, obviously you don't have to face those repercussions if you're on birth control, if you're wearing condoms, right? If you're not, we'll call it, naturally healthy and careful with who you sleep with, not only does it affect, obviously, your ability to bear children, but it also, obviously, affects your ability to pair bond. Your ability to pair bond with a man. And if you're watching this and you do happen to be in your mid to late 20s and you have had several partners already, I would strongly encourage you, as women, to rethink your dating strategy, to rethink your choices. And who the fuck am I? I'm just some guy on the internet giving you advice and watching videos, yeah? But look, I care about my daughter. I care about my daughter's future. I care about our kids' futures, and this is not a topic to be overlooked. There is a lot involved in the discussion of dating, in the discussion of how things should be, okay? So this is all important things, and a lot is involved, as we've discussed in many of our videos on this channel, There are lots of aspects that involve dating. A man's integrity, a man's goals, a man's ideals, your performance and attitude walking into a relationship and in the creation of yourself, right? Focusing on you, what your focus is on yourself determines the kind of man you will become, okay? Not only are those important aspects, but as it is in direct correlation to women, so are your ideals as a woman, so is your infidelity as a woman, so is your amount of partners as a woman, and so is both of your ability to pair bond with each other. A woman's reward for being able to be submissive and, we'll call it, sexually active in the bedroom is monogamy. Okay? That's your reward for treating your man well. I mean, on top of course, kids and everything else. But within the confines of the relationship, we're not talking about getting to the relationship. The words for being in that relationship are monogamy, stable income, right? Because obviously I'm paying for everything that you need and want. And peace, right? As we've already discovered and discussed in many videos, as women are mostly inclined to be monogamous, and as most women are inclined to want to bear children and have some kind of nest, as women are biologically inclined to nesting and creating children, when those needs aren't met, they steer away from them. And this is what we've seen through the feminization of men, is that men have no spine. Men are pussy boys. Men are left or liberal. Men are weak. Men are spineless. Men are not in their masculine frame by feminism's design. And as a direct result, ironically, as a direct result of equality and all the things that women wanted in their men or pushed for and shamed other women for, men have now become feminized. Men have now become the opposite of men. And by direct correlation, we see a huge increase in divorce rates, and we see a huge decrease in marriage rates. An increase in divorce and a decrease in marriage. Because the juice ain't worth the squeeze. So how do we solve the problem? Well, of course, men have to be working on themselves and focusing on themselves and be putting themselves first, absolutely. But we also need to educate each other and hold each other accountable in regards to our infidelities and in regards to our ability to pair bond. Because obviously it's not only important for men, as it is, it's different for men than it is women, but it's still important, yeah? It's important for men, but it's also, and this is Roe versus Wade, this is birth control, this is not being a hoe, this is all things holding women accountable. It also includes pair bonding for the sake of the women, right?
It's kind of a really interesting, and again, I'll put these all down below, but I thought I'd put the science of this out there so that when many, when guys get into when we talk about pair bonding and why it matters with the number of partners that someone's had, this is the science behind it. Now, when you want to talk about the emotions of it, this is the best way that I've seen, that I've read somewhere, and I'll try to put it into my own words. Ladies, if you are listening to this, imagine a man on his 18th birthday is given $1 billion. And if you were to marry him right then and there, that billion would be yours and his and the family's to use. But instead, he decides he wants to be a playboy, and he wants to go with all these hot models, just have his fun, casual flings, and each one he gives $1 million to. or $5 million to. He's just handing out his money like it means nothing. Just casual, just fun. And then one day, he's 33 years old. He has no money left. He has nothing. And you, who wanted to be with him, who told him you liked him, you thought he was handsome and successful and well off, and there was a lot about him, and you just wanted him to get to know you. But he ignored you, and he blew you off to go be with all these beautiful supermodels, beautiful bodies, young, attractive, and he blew all his money on them. And now he's penniless, and he turns to you at 33 years old and broke, and he maybe even has kids by that point with some of the models. And he turns to you and he says, you know what? I've grown up now. I'm ready to settle down. Do you want me? A woman would say, you know something? I might have wanted you $100 million ago. I might have wanted you when you had a little bit more to offer me. But now you're broke. Now you threw all your fun away on and spent all this lavish time and wonderful things on all these women when I was here for you the whole time and you blew me off. And now that you have nothing to give me, now you come begging for me? Now you want me? Now? No, I'm not interested. You should have come to me when maybe you had a little bit more to offer. Well, this is the way that young men and many men look at relationships now. When a woman has her youth and her beauty, and a man says, you know what, I think you're beautiful, I think you're smart, I think you're wonderful, I may not be the best guy in the world, but I'll give you a good life, and I'll be a good man to you. And the woman says, no, I want to have my fun, and I want to spend my beauty and my youth and my time with all these other men. And then at 33, when she's not getting the attention she wants anymore, and she's not getting all the guys coming up to her, maybe guys will still try to, have a one night with her, but no one wants to settle down with her. No one's paying attention to her anymore. And she says, you know what? I'm running out of time. I'm running out of my youth. I'm running out of my good years. Now I'm ready to settle down. You're fine. You got a good job, right? Okay, will you take care of me and maybe my kids or just me? And yes, I'm intelligent. I have a good job. I'm a wonderful person. But I need to get married and I need to get settled down because I do want to have kids and it gets hard mid-30s. But I'm ready now. That guy says, where were you where were your best years? Where were you when you had more to offer as far as that youth and beauty? Because a man's money, if he does well for himself, other than inflation, $1 million is $1 million anywhere in your life. So as men get older, their finances don't go away. They usually get better. But as women age, their beauty does fade. They get wrinkles. Gravity takes over. And takes over for all of us. But men do age differently. And men still are able to provide right up until the day they die. So a man's money at 80 is just as good as a man's money at 20. He may not be quite as attractive to date. This is where this comes into, where guys learn about a woman's past, and when she says, I gave it all away for free, or very cheap to many guys, it loses its value. Because a guy says, well, now you're coming to me after you had all this fun, and you're ready to settle down, and you can't bond, you can't be close to anybody. You had all this fun, and I know the marriage statistics, and I know the infidelity statistics, and I know how all of this works out. There's too much risk here for me. So I'm out. And that's what happens. And it's partially science. And it's partially society. And it's partially the fact that young men will bust their tails. I mean, look at all these simps out there that are literally spending money for nothing. Guys will go out way too far, farther than they should, to go get attention from a woman. And a woman could have one of these guys, and not necessarily this, but a woman, if she really said, hey, I'm going to find the right guy, and I'm going to make him dedicate himself to me, and I'm going to dedicate myself to him. Guys are down for that. There's a lot of guys that are traditional out there. But because this is what happens, and because she gives all her monetary youth away when she's young, and then she shows up and says, I'm ready, guys aren't interested. But guys aren't interested when they're 22 and 25 and 27 and 30 and all the way up through now, because they've seen what's happened to their older friends. They've seen what has happened in men's communities. They see what happens in the divorce courts. They see what happens in society. So before they even have a chance to go looking, a lot of guys are saying, no, I know the math behind this. I know what happens. And I'm out. So there's some science, guys. Take a look at some of this stuff if you want to dig a little bit deeper in it. I thought it'd be an interesting topic for tonight, but I will leave it there because we're way long anyway. Guys, this is Better Bachelor. I'm Joker.
We are way long into this video, I admit. But to put that into context, I apologize. Way far from the mic there. You fucking hunk of shit. I don't care. To put that into context, I appreciate the man's content. Now, and I wanted to share that specifically because he does go over quite a few specific things in his style of podcasting videos. That's Better Bachelor, by the way. We go over Fresh and Fit. We go over entrepreneurs and cars. Better Bachelor is another one, of course. However, to put that into context, like I was saying, for the 15th millionth time, I do want to make it clear that Joker is a part of the MGTOW movement. He is not red pill per se. He is MGTOW, meaning he's done with women. Done. I mean, I'm sure the man will hook up when he gets the chance, but as far as dating is concerned, he is a part of the MGTOW movement, and the MGTOW movement is completely done with women. Like as he just stated, I've seen the numbers, I've seen the statistics. I know that not only is there a 55% chance that you're going to divorce me, but I also know that there's an 88% chance when you do divorce me that you're going to take me for everything I own and you won't be nice about it. Because I know those numbers, because I know the statistics and the facts. I'm done. I'm not even worried about it no more. I'm not worried about marriage. I'm not worried about kids. I'm going to go to work, come home, play video games, get the occasional puss when I need it, and that's it. I'm not worried about dating at all. We could argue semantics, but MGTOW is also, at least in my opinion, a very dangerous black-pilled mindset. Maybe black pill isn't the right term, but MGTOW as a movement, MGTOW as an ideology is also very dangerous because obviously, I mean, at that point, you're just so done that you don't care anymore. That's very dangerous because obviously at that point you're just done. Okay. At that point, nothing a woman can do will take a man's interest. At least in my opinion, and from the handful of men that I've associated with personally who are, by self-proclamation, in the MGTOW camp, those men are done. And whereas before it might be a general red pill lens of you have to do the work, you prove yourself, I'll give you the attention. At that point, in that black pill lens, in that MGTOW movement, I'm just done entirely. If I am to care about my daughter's future in marriage and her own childbearing, if I am to care about our children's dating future and their ability to create children and their children beyond, then that means I have to be self-educated. I have to be self-aware in regards to what's going on around me and within me. That means that I have to be able to recognize my red flags, my flaws, and be able to cognitively work on them. This isn't just a man problem. Obviously, it takes two to tango. This is also a woman's problem. I personally have met more conservative. I have met more Republican. I have met more traditional women in my 32 years of breathing air on this earth than I have personally met liberal women, left women, non-traditional women. And it completely baffles me at how many women do not hold each other accountable for their actions, for their words, for themselves. If I have to hold myself accountable, as it should be, and if I have to hold my friends accountable, as it should be, then so do you. This problem, which is evidently clear, this problem in high divorce rates and low marriage rates, this problem of procreation, and I think it was Jordan Peterson who mentioned in one of his recent podcasts, right now, regardless of the rhetoric you think you're being fed or willing to believe, right now, at this point in history, we are at the lowest. No, I have that backwards. Right now, we are at the highest $7.96 billion people on Earth. We are right now $7.8 billion. We have jumped up to 7.96. Yep, looks about right. We are at this point the highest we will ever be in world population because of the sheer amount, like we saw in our first video, the sheer amount of men not having sex on a small level. Bear with me here. If I stop, I'm 32, and I currently have I only have one daughter. If I stop having sex right now, my DNA ends with my daughter, mostly. When my daughter gets pregnant and has her own kids, she will, of course, bear the genes of her husband through her kids, and of course, my DNA will be in there too. But men's DNA take over a woman's DNA for the most part in the Procreation Act. So if I have no more kids, my bloodline ends somewhere in the next 2 generations of my daughter's children, assuming I don't have any more kids, any more sons. If I don't have any more kids beyond my daughter, and let's pretend even that my daughter has no kids, as long as my daughter has no more children, my bloodline ends. The Rudolphs end with my daughter. That's it. Done. No more. You could take this however you want. I'm definitely not advocating for multiple children, although multiple children I don't think is a bad thing. But the more offspring you have, of course, obviously the better chances of producing your DNA are. If I, myself, don't have any more kids, my DNA ends with my child. If my friend has no more kids, he has a son and a daughter? 2 sons and a daughter? Fuck, I forget. We'll call it 2 sons and a daughter. He has 2 sons and a daughter with his ex-wife, and that's it. That's all the kids he's got. If he has no more kids beyond the age of 35, that means his bloodline is relied upon his 2 sons and his daughter, or his son and his daughter. If his kids don't have any kids, none whatsoever, his kids grow up with my daughter, they realize the juice ain't worth the squeeze, they have no kids. He has, as a man with 2 sons and a daughter, because of the 2 sons, he has a much better chance at producing his bloodline than I do. But if he stops having kids and his kids don't have any more kids, his bloodline ends with that. That's it. His 2 sons and his daughter, or his son and his daughter, done. Gonzo. That's it. The rippling effect. What is it? The butterfly effect? No, that's not it. The pond. Anyways, the ripple effect is huge throughout me, him, Johnny Joe, Jimmy Joe, Chad. This ripple affects my kids' generation, her kids' generation. So when we see such a large number of men just not having sex for whatever reason, doesn't matter really, and we see the decline, in a steep decline, mind you, over 1 generation of not having kids, And this is just the physical aspect of it. We're not talking about the attitude of dating in general. We're talking about just the physical number of bloodlines ending, of no more serious people having kids or trying to have kids, let's say. That's a huge, huge decline. And I'm not worried about the human species going extinct. I'm not trying to fearmonger here. But I want you to really recognize that if one stops having sex, and another stops having sex, and then another, and another, and another, and another, and then all of a sudden, let's say we have a town of 500 men in an entire state. Let's just say in the state of Texas. Texas is a pretty huge state in the U.S., yeah? If 500 men in the state of Texas produce no more kids, done. And we're looking at it in a form of population. Texas, all of a sudden, over the next 60 years, becomes much, much, much smaller. That's just the physical number. We're not even talking at that point about the attitude walking into dating, walking into love, walking into romance, walking into being self-aware, being emotionally mature. Okay? We're talking about just an aspect of our future generations' future. If we don't correct ourselves, if we don't steer this bus back onto the right path and in the right lane, we are looking at a very, very dark future. Or we won't be. We'll be dead. It'll be our kids and our great-grandkids. It'll be my grandkids. My grandkids who will suffer, who will be in the dark, because I, as the man of my family, as the head of my household, refuse to speak up, refuse to be self-aware, refuse to be held accountable, couldn't be bothered, and refuse to hold his people and the people around him accountable. See, you see how that ripple effect matters. You can see the ripple effect in regards to sex, but now let's put that into practice and hold each other accountable now. Hey, that touch, I think you're a bit of a whore. I don't think you're as much of a whore as you should be. I think you should be procreating a bit more. Nah, man, no, I think I'm done having kids. Well, I mean, okay, but look, man, I think you should be working on yourself. Oh, yeah, you know what? You're right. You're right. I should be working on myself. I should be focusing on me and doing this and doing that, whatever the case is. Hey, hey, Chad. Hey, Todd. Hey, my buddy Iron and I were having a talk about, being self-aware and understanding what our red flags are. Hey, you know what? Over the last 6 months, I've really been working on myself, and I'm feeling the improvement. And hey, look, Chad and Todd, I know you guys are good guys. We're friends, we're buddies, but I feel like you guys could be doing better too. Wow, you know what, Ray? Chad, what do you think about that? Yeah, I think you're right, Todd. Hey, Death Touch, thanks, man. Thanks for that chat. Hey, you know what? And all of a sudden, we start seeing a huge ripple effect of men and women, hopefully, holding each other accountable. And all of a sudden, this bus that's careening off the fucking road gets quickly put back on track, because very quickly we're starting to be emotionally mature adults. We're starting to be mentally mature adults. We're starting to become self-aware. We're starting to become accountable. Guys, this is important. And talking about dating, talking about men's dating advice, talking about all this shit is all well and good. You could talk about it until you're blue in the face, but what matters is the practice. I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. You want to know what a man is. You want to know what kind of man you're dealing with. Look at the fruits that he produces. You want to see what a woman's about? Go look at 4 of her friends. Show me 4 whores and I'll show you the 5th. Show me 4 run her mouths and I'll show you the 5th. Show me excuse me, 4 fucking losers who smoke pot all day. I'll show you the 5th. You are who you surround yourself with. I mean, family is important too. Family is a huge, in fact, I would argue, a big contributor to that. But as adults, the kind of people you surround yourself with are important. The kind of goals of the people you surround yourself with important. The kind of ideals of the people that you surround yourself with important. And if you find yourself in a group or company of people who are not about holding themselves accountable, who are not about funding themselves, who are not about exploring other means of making funds, who are not accountable for their children or their families or the people around them, then I would venture to say that you are not around the right group of people. I'm not perfect, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be. But I've came much farther, and I'm quite proud of myself for this. Fuck you. Over the last 3 years in turning my mentality around to a state of being able to at least be self-aware. I might not be very good at practicing the art of self-accountability, but being honest with yourself, absolutely. Being honest with myself, absolutely. There are specific things. Well, that's a rant for another time. That's another rabbit hole. But I digress. Pair bonding is just one of many aspects in men's dating and women's dating too, for that matter. And you have to be aware of the effects of pair bonding, of the effects of having multiple partners, of the effects of a lack of partners for that matter. Please, you need to educate yourself. It's important for you, it's important for the people around you, and it's absolutely important for your kids' sake. My generation wasn't taught any of this. Most of us weren't anyways. I don't know any man who has taught. I don't know any man who has been taught by his father or his grandfather within my generation any of the things that we discuss in these podcasts, any of the things that we discuss in these discussions. I, at 32 years, well, 29, between the age of 29 and 32, had to self-discover what hypergamy is. I, at 29,